Hi guys, so welcome back to the next part of the series. Today we're going to continue with the sculpting of the hammer and we're going to go straight to it. So as you can see, or as you can imagine, one of the things that we're going to need here is to just like give it a little bit more of an organic look over the whole thing. Now I'm just trying to make sure that I'm getting the proper, yeah, there we go. The proper sensitivity on my tablet. So as you can see here, what I'm just going to be doing is I'm going to be using my scrape brush to soften up the edges from the original like model that we did. As we've mentioned before, when you have like very sharp edges, that tends to make it a little bit difficult to bake all of the elements inside of other softwares like Substance Painter, which we're going to be using a little bit later. So I just want to like give this a little bit more for an organic view. I'm going to press a shift here to go into this area. By the way, I was able to solve the screencast issue. It seems that it was an option that we had to change. There you go. So now we can see it on both the sculpting section and the drawing section. It was an option that you need to set, which is the Windows option. So when you're using screencast, I just changed this to window. I might be moving this a little bit closer to the center because that one looks a little bit weird. There we go. I'm going back a couple of steps right here because I do want to have a very like sharp line right there at the very like final part of the hammer, but I want to like smooth some of this like sharp corners right there. There we go. I think the strength is a little bit too much. So let's go to 0.7, which I think was the original one. There we go. Because we don't want to lose that sort of like a hard effect that we had from the what's the word, from the light booleans or the booleans. So that's it. Now, as you can see on the concept, this is one of those pieces that's not gonna need a lot of detail. We're gonna keep it really simple. Yes, we will be using some alphas a little bit later, but as you can see, all of these flat areas, I want to keep them flat. Like I don't want to add more damage than I need to, because that's just gonna like dirty up everything else, and it's not gonna give me like a nice organic effect. A little bit of smooth right there. Let's make this really small so we can sharpen that area right there. There we go. All of this area, I'm gonna just smooth it out. And then again with scrape brush, as you can see, we can give this very organic look to the whole thing. Remember that when we're sculpting, one of the things that we need to keep in mind is the silhouette that we're like achieving, right? Because this silhouette is what we're going to be capturing on the retopology process, and also it's the silhouette that players and our audience is going to be seeing in game. So be very mindful of that, and don't destroy like silhouettes when you don't need to. So for instance, all of this area right here, I'm going to keep it really soft. I'm going to put R to remesh right there. There we go. For instance, this corner right here, I don't really see it on the concept, but it might not be a bad idea to hammer it a little bit more aggressively. Same on like on the front side, for instance, since we don't have a lot of like interesting things on this side, this could be a more damaged corner for the hammer as well. And what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to hide or to blend in all of those elements that we had from the original cube. You never want, especially when we're doing this sort of like realistic stylized things, you don't want to make people think that all of these elements came from very basic shapes. So even though this was indeed originally a cube, like all of this like hard angles that we see here from the bevel, we definitely want them gone. So we can just like very nicely remove them from all of this area right here. Remember that we're doing this piece asymmetrically, so that will indeed have a little bit of extra work that we're gonna have to do when we go into retopology. But I think for this particular part of the whole asset, it's worth it. We're gonna be optimizing several things on other elements, such as the handle and the volcano, which are gonna be symmetrical. But then with this one, which is a box, is always like very relatively easy to what's the word? It's relatively easy to retopologize, so we can afford not to be symmetrical, and that way we're gonna win a little bit more silhouette, like original silhouette for the whole thing. There we go. Again, let's be a little bit aggressive on this corner right there. Let's make the brush a little bit smaller, play with smaller facets, smaller angles, and that's it. Now remember, guys, we're spending quite a bit of time on this, and if you need to spend a little bit more time, it's always important for you to do it. Not so long ago, I was doing a live stream. Some of you might have watched it, and we tried doing a weapon in 2 hours. And even though it was a good result at the end, it's not the same as this one that we've been spending what, like 7 hours so far. So time is always going to be a very, very important factor when we're working on more complex elements such as this one. So don't underestimate the amount of time that something might take. There's a calculation that I always like to do when a client approaches me and they show me a concept for a character, an environment, like anything. I will always have like a guesstimate, right? Like, I don't know, they show me this camera, I'm gonna be like, yeah, this is probably like 15 hours of work, right? But then I'm gonna be like, okay, I think it's gonna be 15 hours. I'm gonna add at least the same amount of hours as a little like a backup, just because I know that there might be certain things that I might be like missing or I might mess up throughout the process and I'm gonna have to fix. So I'm gonna say 30 hours. But then I always know that there's like things that you cannot control. So for instance, maybe there's a system crash or lights go out, or I don't know, like the client wants some changes on the concept at the very end, you're gonna have to adjust it. So there's always things that you cannot like contemplate, right? And due to that, I always add a like half of the original estimate. So it's the original estimate plus 150% pretty much. So if my original estimate was 15 hours, then my final estimate is gonna be 37 hours because of the 15 hours plus the extra half right there. And as you can imagine, I mean, we're really close to 40 hours. So my final number is going to be like, yeah, this is probably going to take 40 hours. So a full week of work is what's going to take to do this element. I don't feel my, like this feels very, very harsh. So I'm actually not feeling my sensitivity. I didn't have any like Adobe software turned on, but I'm definitely like feeling it out. Let me do a quick reset. There we go. One of the things that I love about Blender is that it's so fast. It's very, very fast to open compared to Maya that takes forever. It also is very cool that it always opens on exactly the same place where you left off. So especially for crashes and things like that, it's always super, super handy as well. There we go. So I just want to like sharpen, especially here on the front. I really want to create like this triangular looking cut. So I'm going to use my draw sharp to start like creating that line, or insisting that that line's a little bit more intense. And even something like that, I know it looks very pixelated when we get up close, but again, we're going to be baking it from, or the size that we're going to have on our textures is not going to be as big. So as long as it looks good from this distance, which is at like the most close, or the closest that a character or a player is going to get to it, that's more than enough. Now I can see that we have some like heavy scratches right here. So for instance, I have one right there. I'm gonna go with clay strips again. Just carve in that thing. Let's go back to our scrape. Let's do R real quick to just resample everything. We're at 500,000 polygons. This is perfect for this sort of thing. Again, let's like get rid of some of that very obvious like cube effect. There we go. There we go. And yeah, as you can see, this now no longer looks like a cube, and it starts looking more like a carved thing, right? Let's go again with our clay strips, and let's start adding some more details here. So for instance, right here, I'm gonna be a little bit more aggressive with that scratch. There we go. Same thing here. Especially because this is an area that's very, very flat, and on this area, even though it's very flat, we do have all of these details, like the big cuts. So especially on really flat areas that are gonna be visible, like this one, we do want to have something, you know, a little bit more. So for instance, we could add some cracks or something on the hammer, and then just smooth them out. Just a nice little indication of something going on. Just indicating that this hammer has gone through some stuff. I've always wondered if I could actually curse on the videos. I'm not like a foul-mouthed guy, but I do like to say or to give more intensity to certain things every now and then. But I know some platforms don't like that. So I'm gonna keep it family friendly for now. Let's go with scrape brush again. Just like flatten that to tighten up that like cut right there. Same for this ones right here. See how nice the scrape brush or the scrape brush is for this sort of things. Like it immediately gives us a very nice effect. Now on the side of the hammer, you can see some other lines. So all of this part, like I'm not worried about this part because this is gonna be like combined with the volcano. So I just need to maybe add, you know, like a couple of lines right here. Another one right there on this other side. You know, just to add some visual interest, as I like to say. And now with the scrape brush, I'm gonna thin those out, like flatten them a little bit more. There we go. We could also use the pinch brush, by the way, this one, pinch, and that's also a great way to get it. Yeah, there we go. So that looks really nice. Now we just need to give it a little bit of texture. So I'm gonna go to draw, and we are using a texture. Let's just make sure that the texture that we're using has, yeah, that's perfect alpha. On the stroke, remember that we're anchored, and the view plane is the important one. As you can see, that's gonna give it, this is gonna be a lot softer. So on the strength, I'm gonna go for something like a 0.1. So it's very soft and very important. One of the things that I do want to have is I want to have these sort of lines going in the direction of the stone. And the cool thing is, since this is asymmetrical, we can play around with like the rotation of the texture quite a bit, because the bake is also going to be asymmetrical. And as you can see, this is going to give us a very cool stone looking texture for the whole thing. Even though this is going to be covered, I'm still going to throw in like a couple of alphas here and there, just to have something. It's gonna be very soft. You guys are gonna see later on with the bakes that all of these things that I'm adding, it's just noise. It's just a little bit of noise, and we can do this noise as well in the texturing department with within Substance Painter, but still gonna give us a very nice result. There we go. Let's take a look at how everything is looking over here, and look at that. Not freaking bad. Where's the blade? There we go. Nice. Now, one thing I did notice, and I want to fix it right now, is the on this part right here on the volcano, the union with this thing should be a little bit flatter, and right now it looks a little bit tapered. So I'm gonna grab my I'm gonna use my grab brush here to play a little bit with the way this thing is gonna be like actually touching the handle or the hammer right there, because I definitely want to make sure that it looks quite strong. Go. Now this is actually a nice question here. Should the hammer and the volcano be one? And the answer is, I'm not sure. It kind of doesn't look like it, because as you can see here on the element, there's a very like obvious line, and you can see that this thing is anchored to that whole volcano. So that's why it makes me think that we don't need to really like get that in there. However, that's actually a valid question. That's the kind of question, by the way, that you should go to the art director or to the concept artist and be like, hey, what was your like plan right here? Like, what was your intention? Because sometimes, again, when we're planning something, it might look like we're intending to have a specific function, but then when we actually see it in action, you're like, yeah, that actually doesn't make a lot of sense. So in this particular case, the artist could be like, yeah, you know what, like that actually doesn't make sense. I think it will be better if they're just like the same piece, like the stone carved from that. Now here I'm already carving a little bit on the volcano from the eventual armor that we're going to be adding. You can see there on the concept that we're going to have that loop right there. So this is the place where that loop is going to be. But then there's like a little border, like that black border. So I'm just going to start like adding that line right there. Again, I'm moving ahead a little bit on what we're going to be doing on the next video, which is the actual supports of this hammer. But yeah, there we go. So not looking bad, right? Like not freaking bad. This is a really good high poly so far, and yeah, we're just gonna keep pushing it. So I'm gonna stop the video right here, guys, and in the next one we're gonna start doing the armor for this thing. Hold on tight, and I'll see you back on the next video.